Hello again. In the few weeks that we've been teaching people how to use the NaioAFM at WPI, we've learned a few things that we'd like to present to you as reminders and hints and tips. Here they are. In this short video, we're going to talk about probe handling, the scan head's position, the sample's position, and the care and feeding of your probes. What we've found is that the hardest thing about this instrument is the loading and unloading of the probes. We're now recommending to our students that the loading and unloading be done in two steps. First step from the probe storage unit, whatever that is, to on the drop stop, such as right here. You see that we have spray painted our drop stop white as kind of an indication of the landing area. The second step, as indicated here, is where you go from the drop stop to the alignment chip. And what you can do, because you already have the probe on the drop stop, is use the drop stop as a secure point for the fingers in your hand that are not grabbing onto the tweezers. And ultimately, of course, you remove the insertion tool and have the probe loaded in the alignment chip before removing the drop stop and proceeding with imaging. For unloading the probe, you would proceed in the reversed order. You would place the probe on the drop stop and then take it from the drop stop to your storage unit, whatever that is. So that's our recommendation, to do the loading and unloading in two steps. Imagine the following situation. A user comes in, images a thin sample, forgets to fully raise the scan head before powering down the instrument. Then the next user comes in, inserts a thick sample, flips over the scan head, does not notice that the scan head is not fully raised, and then what happens? You get a crash between the scan head and the sample, and then it's okay if only a probe is broken, because that is something that could damage the scan head, which is much, much worse. So what I would like you to do is to make sure you use the home button before you power down the instrument. The home button fully raises the scanner. So please, please, please do that as part of your finishing procedure. Also, when you come in and you do an approach for the first time, after you insert your first sample and you flip the scan head over, and you're bring it down very carefully, and watch the separation between the scan head and the sample. You should have at least a millimeter there, so that that kind of serious crash does not happen on your watch. Another cause of sample crashes has to do with the placement of the sample, particularly for larger specimen discs. The suggested diameter of specimen discs, sample mounts, if you will, is 15 millimeters. Larger ones, 20 millimeters or so, will still work, but if you place them too far back on the sample chuck, back here, what happens is when the scanner comes down, it hits that backside and flips the sample up into the probe, and might break your probe, might damage the scanning mechanism. So what we want you to do is to make sure that you mount your sample center or forward. Center is fine for 15 millimeter discs, but not back. And for the larger sample discs, mount them a little bit forward. We're trying to show that here. There's a little portion of the sample chuck showing in the back for a larger disc. That's good. here's one that might cause that flip-up problem. So do pay attention as you place your sample into the AFM. Naturally, everyone wants to take good care of their probes, conservatively managing their use. We call this probe husbandry, if you will, the care and feeding. My recommendation is to use a 5x5 gridded gel pack, which is just a storage box with tacky material on the bottom. Here I've got a schematic thereof with 5 new probes in the top row. I'm going to use the probe on the left, and we're going to pretend we can use it 20 times without dropping it or breaking it or wearing it down so badly that we give up on it. So in its first position, its first time before use, 5 probes would look like this, and then when I start and use it again and again and again, I go down the row, then I rotate it by 90 degrees, and then another 90 degrees, and as you can see, I'm going to get 20 uses out of these 5 different spots, and wow, I've made it to 20. So by moving your probes up and down through the grids and making sure that their rotation is in the proper way, you can get 20 uses, and I applaud the first one of my students who will make it to that point. I also recommend that every time you rotate by pi over 2, 90 degrees, that you do so counterclockwise. Counterclockwise is a positive direction in XY coordinate systems, at least right-handed XY coordinate systems, and is the positive direction in physics. In summary, we've conveyed here the 4 operational hints that we have learned that is helpful to students as they're learning the NaioAFM. They concern probe handling, scanner crashes due to the initial and final position of the scan head, scanner crashes due to sample positioning, and the care and feeding of your probes. So now, with tutorials 1 through 3, you should be ready for your first lab. Remember, there's a quiz, but have fun.